Hello legends. Well, the response to our UK content has been absolutely massive. Aussies are seeing all the parallels and our UK audience is building. So we're launching the UK Brief, your Tuesday night wrap of the biggest stories coming out of Great Britain and Europe. So we have to start with this one. England basking in World Cup, whatever it is, celebrating bring it home glory. God help us all. Well, this one takes the cake though. A pub in Australia, and it's worth waiting until the end.
Tears for heroes dressed in grey. No plans for final day. Stay in bed, drift away.
I mean, you got to love it. We love the pommy tourists. Well, while we're on the football, the US officially out of the World Cup, but not through lack of trying from Donald Trump. Trumpy, you know, he just has to step in, and boy did he step in after he says was a bad red card, a call against the US striker to challenge the decision, which resulted in FIFA overturning the suspension with little explanation. Here's Uncle Donald.
And that wasn't a foul. And that was two guys running full speed that happened to crash into each other. You can't take your foot and properly place it on somebody else's foot. This referee, who is a little bit suspect, if you check his past. I don't want to say that because I don't like to create controversy, but very suspect. If you'd like, I'll provide you with the past. Yes, I asked for a review by FIFA. I spoke to a man who's highly respected, and by the way, whose level of respect has gone up tenfold. And he was good before this started. You can't do that. If you would have taken him out, I think it would have really stained this incredible champion.
I mean, you would if you could. Well, tonight, former royal chaplain to the Queen, Gavin Ashenden, reacts to King Charles replacing his 500-year-old title of Defender of the Faith with Protector of the Space for Faith. Also on the show, Will Geddes breaks down why Nigel Farage's finances are again under scrutiny, and how a convicted grooming gang rapist has avoided deportation because of a government loophole. And my interview with Reform UK's London mayoral candidate, Layla Cunningham, who says Britain is right now paying the price for mass illegal migration, with rising crime and politicians too afraid to act. So, let's get into it. Here's former royal chaplain to Queen Elizabeth II, Gavin Ashenden. Gavin, so lovely to speak with you. I really appreciate your time. It's been a large week in many regards around the world, and I saw your comments about the King, and I wondered first of all if you could just let our audience know a little bit of your history.
Hi, Karl. Well, it's a real pleasure to meet you, and on behalf of people who are desperate to hear the truth being spoken, I know you've had to pay a huge price for speaking it, but thank you for doing it. We need you to be free to speak the truth, and it's very difficult if you're employed nowadays. So that's how things have become. But there we are. Well, we're in a very strange place, one that I could never have imagined growing up. In fact, it's really taking quite a sort of an elasticity of the mind to digest where we are. I was thinking about our conversation this morning and wondering how to explain in very straightforward ways what's happened. And I think it's that story of the emperor without any clothes. So the emperor buys us supposedly a suit of clothes. They look wonderful. There is a kind of social contagion takes place with nobody wanting to be the odd one out. But a child who knows no better is prepared to be the odd one out and tells the truth, and everyone goes, oh yeah, that's the truth. I think quite shortly, you and I, who are the children shouting out that the emperor has no clothes, will soon discover that the crowd wakes up, but just for the moment they're involved in the terror of not wanting to be excluded or laughed at. So I think we're in an interim period. What's happened? We a whole series. Isn't it interesting the way you went reading history? You can see that as well as the kind of currents of history, there are always circumstances that happen coincidentally, it seems. Coincidentally, we have a woke king. Coincidentally, we have a king who can't think straight, who had, despite having had the best possible education, has got caught up in something that pleases him, which is the idea that all religions and all spiritualities are of equal value, and if you can somehow mix them together, it's good. It's good for society. No, there's no evidence in history of this at all, and it's philosophically and conceptually inept. But that's where he is, and like a lot of people, when they've grown up, they don't have fresh thoughts. So unfortunately, just at the moment when we have an authoritarian government trying to inflict some kind of self-harm on its own society, we have the head of that government, the nominal head, pursuing his own ideas, which happen to coincide with them, and continue the process of unravelling everything that's held our society together. So it's difficult to name a single cause, but we have these factors all coming together.
So why do you think what the king did, and it was somewhat surreptitiously, I'm sure you'll agree, but why was it oath-breaking?
You can present it in one of two ways. You can either say, look, it's a creative extension of some rather dull historic words that he was required to make. But the thing is, the rather dull historic words are an oath. I mean, they're an oath that was put together by the English Parliament after a civil war several hundred years ago. At the time, they were seen as a way of keeping society safe. They were meant as an oath. They were meant as an expression of how to keep English society from civil war. They were taken very seriously. The fact that we're not a serious civilization anymore, we're not serious about our constitution, we're not serious about our laws, doesn't affect the fact that that's what they are. They're serious laws. So in order to be king, the heir to the throne has to swear an oath, which Parliament has written, saying he's going to do two things. He's going to be Supreme Governor of the Church of England. That's a really weird thing, and it's not. In fact, it isn't even a thing. It's a historical sort of anachronism. But there it is. You know, that's the name of it, and we know how it got there. And then he's going to say, because they were terrified of Catholics, he's going to be defender of the Protestant Reformed faith, and he makes an oath. Now, if you're an heir to the throne and you look at this stuff and you say, this doesn't suit me at all, well, I'd rather be a private citizen with the privilege of my own views, then he's entitled to do that. But you and I both know the time comes when, as a grown up, that if you want the privilege of integrity, you have to pay the price. But he's somebody who wasn't prepared to pay the price. So what he's done instead is to say, well, I know this is what I promised, and I know this is what over 400 years, this society that I'm going to be king of requires this. But I'm going to try and change it bit by bit so it suits me better. That's not integrity. That's not honest. That doesn't help anybody. It's just confusing and self-serving.
Okay, so with specific reference to this obsession with multi-faith safe spaces, where do you think that obsession comes from?
Well, actually, it's understandable, and I have a lot of sympathy to it. For a while, for complicated reasons, I shared the mental attitude the king has. I became a professor of psychology at a university. I taught Freud and Jung. This is Jung. Let's not bore our listeners, but essentially, we can make it we can spice it up a little bit. Freud thought that all the problems of human consciousness and unconsciousness were to do with sex. European society found that very exciting. It bought into that, and so for about 100 years, you couldn't do anything without the idea of the id and the superego and our repressed sexual desires being behind everything. But he had a young friend called Carl Gustav Jung, who took a totally different view to religion, because Freud hated religion, loved sex. Jung loved sex, but he also loved religion. So you can see why I was sympathetic towards him. Anyway, he had this idea that if the struggle for human beings was kind of reconciling the consciousness and the unconsciousness, and there's a lot of it's a good narrative. It's a complex matter. He thought that religious symbolism was a way to do it. The problem is your dreams don't speak to you in coherent language. Whatever our unconscious is, it's not linguistically fluent. It works with images and symbols. And he thought religion was the place where you found symbols which united, which gave a chance of human integration. Teachers endlessly talk about Jungian ideas when they talk about kids having limitless potential. The fact is, kids may not have any potential. the idea that they're kind of superhumans in embryo and all of them can become Einstein is part of our own self-illusion. But the idea of everyone having a potential that can be realised is Jung. And he saw it as really taking place if you became religiously, spiritually literate. And then he saw religion as kind of like a library of books. Read all the books, put them all together, develop. It doesn't matter what their content is, it's the process. So Jung's not very interested in the content of religion, nor is King Charles. But he's entranced at the idea, because he's spiritually alert, that if you can somehow become literate in all the religions, you produce a better kind of human being. Well, it's partly true. I mean, there's a lot to be said for the religious process acting well in terms of, for example, saving us from the kind of weird materialism that we've got into, thinking that the only things you can trust are things you can measure. In that sense, Charles and Jung are not wrong. But the fact is that the religion... So one should also say that religion is only philosophy. There is no such thing as religion and non-religion. Everyone has a philosophy. Who the heck am I? How did I get here? How am I supposed to live? Where am I going to go? What's it all about? This is not religious. This is just a human condition. And one of the silliest ways of dealing with this is to say, I'm here for a moment. I won't be soon. I'm going to snuff it. There are no questions. I mean, that's nonsense. We have to find meaning. And for meaning, you either have to be religious or philosophical, or both. So the problem is that the different religions have different contents to them. And some of them are aggressive and contradictory. That's just so obvious. And to call a spade, Islam and Christianity and Judaism have three... Well, let's go with Islam and Christianity. They've got completely different ideas. They both say they're right. Islam is more pugnacious than Christianity is, and they fight. And they've been fighting for 1,500 years. They don't live together well. And we've got a culture where politicians and ideologues, and especially the idiots who have sort of swallowed an idea that was born in France in the 18th century, that human beings are endlessly perfectible if only you give us enough education and information. Then we can really sort things out. I mean, there's nothing in human history that suggests this is remotely likely. You need an idea that says human beings are both absolutely amazing and astonishingly dangerous. That's what Christianity's original sin's all about. So the problem is we have religions that are different, set against each other, where violence is always lurking, and you've got to find a way of managing them by, rather like a lion tamer in a circus, treating them seriously for what they are. King Charles is like a blind and deaf lion tamer, unable to see that the things he's dealing with are really potentially very dangerous.
Mm. Well, I was going to ask you about that, but why do you think it is? I mean, I guess you could say that Christianity hasn't, always been contractually, they've been more expansionist, unfairly or fairly. But how to bring them together, especially during these times, is especially difficult, I would have thought, and it would take more than the king. Do you think it's actually a threat to his survival in that way?
Yes, I do. I mean, so the question you raised earlier on is about the difference in Christianity and the capacity of religions to make things better or worse is one that has to be looked at. Whether we do it here and now or somewhere else doesn't matter. It's very important. In terms of whether the king will survive, well, I don't think he can. And I'm not saying that as a kind of an act of revenge because he's saying things I don't approve of. The problem is The idea of the Christian monarchy is a really interesting one, and it's worked quite well. It needed to develop. There were obvious abuses, but it's based upon a kind of contract between the monarch and the people. And the idea is we have strengths and weaknesses that can look after each other. The people need a monarch because you need government and you need safety. And the monarch needs the people because you can't have a monarch without any people. There's a kind of symbiotic mutual reliance. It was introduced by the feudal system. And essentially, if you've got an external danger, the way a leader and his people work together can either work for one another against the danger or the opposite. So the idea of a king is that in Western society is essentially the king had his conscience looked after by the Pope. It was the Pope's job to tell kings they could and couldn't behave. There's a lovely bit in the Middle Ages when popes say to the warring kings of Europe, you can't fight each other on holy days. You're not allowed to kill one another on saints' days. And suddenly the death toll fell by 30% because one in every 3 days was a saint's day. And I thought this was a very good example of Christianity working to restrain our natural savagery. But in European history, the Pope was the guardian of the king's conscience, and kings had to answer for the Pope for it. And it mattered because they were afraid of going to hell. So there was a kind of equilibrium in terms of the way in which society was done. When people stopped being Catholic, the kings had their own conscience. And essentially Parliament in this country became keeper of the king's conscience. Well, popes have had their problems, but parliaments have got worse problems. And so Parliament wasn't a very good keeper of the king's conscience. And as you see at the moment, although the king has ignored the oaths he made to us through Parliament doesn't care. It's not doing anything about it. It's not behaving like a sensible parent and drawing the boundaries and saying, well, hang on, excuse me a moment, you can't do that because you're bringing our integrity into question. Because Parliament is so illiterate in this particular part of our culture, it doesn't realise how important what the king is doing. But essentially, the king is involved in a piece of social engineering where by stealth he's trying to get the country and the monarchy to reflect the mental furniture inside his own head. Now, he's entitled to do that, but he needs to ask us. So, you know, that's what it is to be in a democracy. You have to agree. Part of the reason that you know we have so much trouble at the moment is we're no longer in a democracy; we're in an autocracy, and so the most important thing is not whether you argue about should the king be governor of a non-faith zone or not. We can come to that, but the first thing is, can the king change the circumstances of society without asking anybody? And the answer is no, he can't. And his predecessor, King Charles I, had his head chopped off when he tried. It's actually quite a serious matter. So no, you don't do it by smuggling your preferred change of wording into an accounts document. You do it openly and you make yourself accountable.
That is fascinating to listen to. So is there any recourse? Can anyone do anything about it if you make a decision like that? Or is it now just in play and everyone has to suck it up?
I was in a Zoom group last night with some Christian lawyers who were talking about it, and the answer I said, well, look, we have 2 or 3 very eminent Christians in Parliament, not many more than that.
Yeah.
So it's their job to say, look, Parliament has to take this seriously. We take our laws seriously. I mean, if you don't take laws seriously, what the heck are you doing?
And what other changes might be coming?
Yeah, exactly. So it's up to the parliamentarians who take process and content seriously to say to the king, no, sorry, you can't smuggle your changed oath into an accountancy document in order to look back on it as if it set some kind of precedent. That won't do. Stop all this. You know, we understand. So, see, if I can just go back one second. One of the reasons why we loved the Queen was that she was WYSIWYG. What you saw was what you got. She put duty first. And there was none of this, I think I myself would prefer to do it this way. She was great at serving the people at the cost of her own self-interest. Her son is not quite so good at this. He wants to have his cake and eat it. But Charles has to be told, if you want to be king, sorry, you're going to be a grown-up. You're an old chap now. You do your duty. You don't do what you want. And your duty was expressed in the oaths you took. If you don't like it, step aside. Lots of people want to be king. Somebody else will do it for you. But meanwhile, you cannot have your cake and eat it. So if you want...
This is such a good point. Sorry to interrupt. Because I was such an admirer of the Queen, to be so steady and strong for so many years, and that commitment to duty was, like something the world has seldom seen. And I wondered what she would make of this.
Oh, I think she'd know. She would know it's a disaster. I mean, she was a very intelligent, alert woman, full of integrity. I think one of the reasons we liked it is you felt that. It wasn't exactly what she did or what she didn't do. You just saw you were dealing with a woman of integrity. And we like integrity because when you have a world run by people with integrity, things are safe. Good is good, bad is bad, and the negotiation between them becomes possible. If you don't have people with integrity, then that whole contract, that stability just disappears. So people liked her, indeed they loved her because of that. And she was a model on how this thing is to be done. Unfortunately, Charles hasn't... I mean, his route to the throne wasn't really very propitious. But probably if he wanted a mistress, he should probably have said, I'd like to be happy. I'll give up the king jog thing. I will go and live in one. I'm a very, very rich man. I've got my wife and my family. Let me be happy. I'll go away and be happy. OK. And everyone said, sure, you go and be happy. We don't care who's king. We just want someone to do a good job. And I think we may have run out of people who can do a good job. But nevertheless, he's stayed in, and I just think he's falling short of what's asked of a king in these particular complex circumstances.
So what happens from here, my man, to finish off? Because, I mean, I could talk to you all day, and I will have you definitely back on the show if you'd be so inclined. But what happens from here? How does it fester, and how does it shake down over the next months, and what are the impacts?
Oh, well, it depends on whether you want the kind of I'd like to sleep at night scenario or the apocalyptic scenario.
I think apocalyptic. Let's stay with the Bible.
Well, we're in the middle of a civil war. A fairly famous professor of war studies at King's London Professor Betts has been saying this for a while. He, being a sophisticated academic, it's not black or white. It's a process. He reckons we're at stage sort of 4 out of 6. There's going to be trouble on the streets. In the last 3 years, trouble has erupted in one form or another, unexpectedly, either through two-tier policing or through immigrant violence. The English people are faced with a choice that if they want to surrender their culture and their country, do nothing, they will surrender it. They will live in an authoritarian state which penalises them, or they take to the streets and take it back. I'm not suggesting violence. I like the idea of just 3 million bodies on the streets saying you cannot run this country unless you ask us to go home, and we will only go home if you promise to police us fairly, to have fair court, all the things we had: freedom of speech, freedom of policing, freedom of justice, a civil service that works for us, not against us. But to do that, we'll have to go on the streets.
Gavin, these are dangerous ideas. I mean, this is the sort of stuff that gets you locked up and cancelled.
Yes, no, I have been cancelled. I probably will be locked up. I mean, but I'm not. I'm not. For God's sake, in the name of 250,000 effing women who've been raped, what are we going to do? Just shut up? I mean, it's not about. It isn't about our luxury. It's about, it seems to me, if you have a conversation, you cannot have it without saying 250,000 white girls at the bottom of the social heap have been raped. And if you're a man, and if you have any sense of integrity, you cannot close your eyes to that. The Germans should not have closed their eyes to what was done to the Jews in the 1930s. And by closing their eyes, they allowed that authoritarian state to happen. I will not close my eyes to what's happening and allow my fellow citizens, whatever class they are, whatever colour they are, to be raped by a state-sponsored anarchic programme of mayhem. So, it's dangerous. That's right. And I haven't come this far. The thing about being an old man is you've fought a lot of battles, And every one of those battles mattered. And the battles don't get easier. No, CS, this is the last battle. So I will speak out as much as I can until they silence me, because the things that are happening are so diabolical, they're so dangerous, they are so corrupt that they have to be stopped. And you cannot sleep at night, especially if you're a man, if you don't do something about it. So let's do it peacefully. Let's put 3 million people on the streets of London. Let's tell them we are not going home until they give us back the society that created us, that we benefited from, and that we are invested in. We have the power to do that at the moment, but we won't soon. There isn't very long. And the fact that we have if you are going to be defender of the faith as a king, if you're going to have a compact with your people, there is a moment in history when freedom of speech and freedom of choice and democracy are hanging by a thread. It's now. That's what the king should be dealing with. He should be requiring the courts that act in his name to do justice. He should be requiring the policing of our society to act in his name to police fairly. He should be requiring a society where freedom of speech is absolutely integral to everything we believe in to happen. He's doing none of those things. That's we need something better from him. We need something better from our leaders. And we can only do it, I think, by taking to the streets peacefully. What other way is there? Let's avoid violence if we possibly can. But we have to take to the streets.
Well,
that's it.
I appreciate you being on the show. I will either see you on the streets or we can share a cell together.
I look forward to it either way. Either way, we're not doing nothing. Great to meet you, and thank you for being willing to pay the price yourself, because you have done. It's not cheap, and it matters.
Thank you, Gavin. Very keen for your thoughts on that chat. What an interesting guy. What does King Charles, what does the move really mean? Let us know your thoughts. Well, now to Will Geddes on all of the latest news out of the UK, and there's been plenty. You get more and more handsome every day, Will.
Carl, and likewise, my goodness me. Leave some ladies for the rest of us, Carl. Seriously.
I've got enough. I don't want to go down the Anthony Albanese, the track today with the Kylie Minogue thing.
Please.
How's that gone down over there, by the way?
To be honest, with the state of our government over here, it's another day with a Y in it, to be honest. Although it was hideously cringeworthy watching Albanese just squirming away talking about Kylie, who I actually, funnily enough, saw on the end of last week. So she's a national treasure. You can't speak about a national treasure like that.
I'm not sure if he was the last guy on earth, whether she'd be choosing Albanese. I digress. A lot has happened since I last saw you last week, and a lot in my life, obviously. How have things been in the UK?
They've been very good. It's been standard stuff. I talk about personally, pretty good, pretty busy. Lots of shenanigans going on, everything from the World Cup through to international events. But Carl, I have to say, you've been dominating the headlines over here. There are many, many good colleagues of mine. You've blown up hugely. You and I have been friends for a while. And obviously, a lot of the stuff that we've done was very Australia-based. You are truly on the international map now, my friend. So there's no escaping. You're going to need my help.
What do you charge these days for security?
A heck of a lot, Carl. Nothing changes there.
All right, my man, let's start with the World Cup. And, it pains me greatly to watch England doing so well. Obviously Australia got knocked out, and I'm grieving for the Australian team, but to watch England powering like they are it is very difficult to swallow. It's like a beer in Northern England on a hot summer's day.
Yeah, it's been an interesting time down there. I know Mexico really well from a threat perspective, obviously from a professional point of view, Carl. And I think in terms of the operation that the Mexican authorities ran, certainly in the wake of the very recent heightened cartel activity, I think they did a pretty damn good job. Obviously bearing in mind the fans tried to repeat the same strategy they used on Ecuador by firing fireworks throughout the night because they couldn't get close enough to the hotel to try and disturb the players. But the players seemed to sleep through. Other than Harry Kane losing his voice and them surviving the altitude, they did pretty good. And the Wags as well. None of them got kidnapped, so I didn't get a call.
You're expecting it, half expecting it. It was an unbelievable game, and the reaction around the world. I mean, we've seen, the Pommy backpackers everywhere going. I mean, it was reluctantly saying to you and admitting to you in confession with Will that it was beautiful to see, man. And lovely to see also Donald Trump weighing in, controlling FIFA the way he has. I mean, this guy. Is there another example more blatantly of FIFA being a corrupt organisation than that? I don't know.
No, I don't think so. I mean, and FIFA have made a pretty good statement, a robust statement about the fact that obviously the decision lies with the referee. They can't overturn that. And I think Donald Trump's got to, suck it up and appreciate that player will not be obviously playing in the next game. Now, who's to know that the manager of the team wasn't necessarily going to replace him anyway or bench him for the next game? So I don't think it's very good for Donald Trump's optics. But where it's really interesting, Carl, is it gives us an insight into the fact that Donald Trump is massively unfiltered. And if he wants to say something that's on his mind, he won't listen to anybody. He'll say it.
Well, the USA got knocked out. I just caught the highlights then. So it's going to be harder to explain when they suddenly end up back in the tournament in the final.
Yeah, it might be. I think it might look a little rigged if it does.
Okay, let's go. Nigel Farage. He's under the pump again. I saw his explosion at the Sky News, media team that was at the airport. I think it was. And all of these accusations again around his personal finances, the 5 million, and now accusations, some more information coming out. He's denying that he's done anything wrong. How do you explain it, first of all?
Well, it's an interesting one. I mean, in terms of personal security, Nigel Farage's argument is that he had this engaged prior to becoming an MP. Now, IPSA, who is the Independent Parliamentary Standards Authority, who are the ones who decide, what needs to be declared, what doesn't need to be declared, and would also be directly involved, Carl, if an MP had a heightened level of security. I mean, the most recent case where we've seen this readdressed was in the wake of Joe Cox being killed, who was an MP killed by a far-right extremist. Now, the question is his personal security. He's a very divisive person in many people's perspective. He polarizes opinions very, very quickly. And by proxy of that, he has been attacked in public, whether that be by members of the general public throwing things at him. But his risk profile significantly increases. Now, I have done some indirect work with Nigel. I do know Nigel. I can't go into detail, Carl, but suffice to say, he probably is on a far heightened level of security than probably any other MP right now outside of the cabinet. Now, the other question is IPSO could go to RAVEC, who are the group that obviously decides on security and what level of security, and we've quite recently had that name bandied about in connection with Prince Harry and his continual request for royalty protection standards, which are the same as obviously other members of the serving royal family, which he's not serving in, obviously. But RAVEC would be involved in obviously assessing and then providing through the Home Office personal security for Nigel. Now, the question is Nigel doesn't have a say in who his protection officers necessarily are. He's just given what the Home Office may decide is given to him. So him acquiring his own, I totally back. I think it's very important that a principal has a personal input to say, yes, I like these officers. Yes, they speak my language. Yes, they're going to satisfy my needs and my requirements, and also adapt accordingly to my lifestyle as much as possible without obviously diminishing the protection that I'm going to have. And I have the same thing, Carl, with my principals. I'll say, do you like this particular protection officer? And if you don't need to tell me why you don't want them, but I'll replace them. And it is a very personal, because remember, your personal protection officers are going to be with you pretty much round the clock. So you've got to have people that you trust, but you also like.
I was just aside from all of that too, this George Cottrell link I find pretty fascinating, and now some financial accusations surrounding that. Do you think there's anything in that, or is that an establishment witch hunt?
I think there's a certain degree of witch hunt which is going on, but I think Nigel hasn't done a brilliant job on that one. I think whoever was advising him should have simply turned around the first time he got challenged about this money from George Cottrell. And remember, this was before he was an MP that he actually took this donation of some £5 million. He should have turned around and said, "Yeah, I've taken this donation." Name me any party out there that hasn't had a donation from a spurious source. And there are many, many of the more mainline government parties, which, to be honest, political parties, which have had money from overseas donors. And they, I would say, come into a more questionable bracket than necessarily George Cottrell, who, yes, albeit he is a convicted criminal, but that conviction is now spent. He is now a businessman. You may like him, you may not like him, but no political party can survive without donations. But I think, who he without sin cast the first stone.
I get all that, but I wonder just, if you're living, on the breadline, so to speak, in some of those electorates, and, the pub test in Australia is the pub test in the UK. If you've got the guy who, spent some time in the big house, in charge of collecting donations. I mean, I wonder if there's an optics issue there. I mean, and no, I'm not drawing any kind of disparaging, link to his doing the big house time. But for me, it's like, is he the right guy to be in charge?
Well, it's an interesting one. And I mean, I think that is a question that still has yet to be answered, Carl. I think it's too early days to necessarily answer that one. But I think in terms of optics, I couldn't agree with you more. I think, there should be more transparency. I think the biggest overwhelming generic problem that the electorate have with any MP right now is transparency, or the lack of transparency. And I think, okay, they don't have to go quite as transparent as your Prime Minister, Mr. Albanese, in terms of his likes of Kylie Minogue, but there needs to be some sort of financial aspect, because we've seen Angela Rayner recently questioned about some of her expenses. We've seen many MPs question about their expenses, and that's what I think ticks off the electorate. So Nigel falling into the same bracket, I think, is a problem.
So when you're campaigning heavily for people who are really struggling out there, and a George Cottrell comes along, and then there's accusations, and then Nigel is confronted by Sky News, there is a weight that comes from that of expectation of accountability, and I just it will keep building until it's all been explained.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, Carl. And I think the problem is that unless it's addressed head on, and in my crisis advising capacity that I do with clients when they get themselves into some sort of SH1T and they need to dig themselves out of it quick, is to say, right, just come at this cleanly, don't lie, be honest about it, because people will appreciate that. And if you have made a mistake, own it. Because if you own that mistake, again, we're all human. We can all make mistakes, but people will appreciate that accountability, which regrettably so many politicians don't seem to understand.
Completely. Okay, a couple of quick ones. I noticed that Keir Starmer too, he gave that, relatively emotional farewell, au revoir, sayonara. I'm sure he's going to get a different kind of farewell if he walks anywhere on the streets of the UK. He's saying strategically, whoever goes into number 10 is going to have difficulties because of the political environment, geopolitical environment. At the same time, yesterday, we saw China fire off some ballistics. How much of a concern geopolitically was that flex from Xi Jinping?
I think it's significant. Again, it's just showing to everybody, particularly with Taiwan being in the balance, and we know Taiwan is the jewel in the crown that China really wants to get to. And again, that's been knocked back somewhat by certainly the conflict in Ukraine and the conflict, obviously, with Iran right now. But ultimately, China, there is a reminder to the world to say, we're still a player. We're still someone you need to consider very carefully. And more often than not, it's a bit like North Korea, Carl. They'll deploy missiles. They'll test ballistics more than anything else to saber rattle, to say, we are a force to be reckoned with. And the same applies with China. And I know China, and I think we all know that China would love to acquire Taiwan by whatever means possible. But we know strategically, if they take Taiwan, that's going to have significant repercussions across the world.
It is. They are ballsy. I mean, well, they don't care. I mean, this is the same day that Australia did a pact with Fiji. I mean, it violates the Treaty of Rarotonga in New Zealand. Everyone's jumpy about it all. I just wonder which way in the breeze that one swings for China, or they don't care.
Well, I don't think they care, to be honest, Carl. I mean, they're pretty self-contained as an economy. They're not that reliant on the United States or anywhere else for that matter. You know, they've taken very much the sort of post-World War II Japanese approach of basically shutting the borders and saying, right, we're going to build our own economy. We'll become self-robust and self-resilient. We're seeing the same with Russia right now. You know, yeah, they're again very robust, self-reliant. Yes, they've got some relations with India, potentially with Pakistan, certainly with China. Again, not reliant on the West whatsoever. So I don't think China probably cares.
Okay. Can we have the AUKUS subs now?
What, this minute, Carl?
Now-ish?
Yeah, that would be nice. Yeah, I mean, just looking at the state of our military here in the United Kingdom, it's a shocking mess. It's so deplete. I know some friends who are in special forces. Their numbers are diminishing. You know, there's zero morale, and this is again the horrendous dividends that are now paying out against the terrible recruitment strategies which our government have tried to apply to appeal to the PlayStation playing generation and the woke whatever they're called, the woke, let's just call them that. You know, that's not what the military is about. The military is about people who are going to go out and do their thing for the king and the shilling. But we've also got the Labour Party and Keir Starmer prosecuting veterans for actions of 40, 50, 60 years ago. So who wants to go into the military? And especially, I mean, you've got your own issues with BRS back in Australia. I saw your interview on that, and it was and yeah, there were massive echoes over here of similar things which are taking place.
It's crazy. I mean, how do you expect our troops to go in? Can you recruit anyone to go into an organisation or the defence force and protect the country and then get prosecuted for it when they get home? Anyway, it's a side issue. I wanted to ask you just quickly. It's really set fire in Australia. I think people are now more aware of the gang rape inquiries. You've had another incident during the week of a deportation incident. There are reports that this convicted rapist can't be deported because of red tape. I mean, this story is so entrenched in the UK. Such a worry on the streets.
Yeah, it is. It's disgusting because, again, you know, we had a former barrister who was our prime minister, who unfortunately we know from his history was more likely to defend someone like Shabir Ahmed, who was this individual who was the godfather of grooming up in the north, who was an individual who's been in this country since the 70s. But again, there's a law which applies back to 1973, which prevents and prohibits him being deported from the United Kingdom. And you can only imagine the fear and concern and anxiety and being induced into the victims of this individual who's now walking around again in their communities. I think we need to take a leaf out of the book, or a page out of the book of President Meloni in Italy, who not so long ago actually deported an imam who was a national Italian. But, you know, he got deported back to his country of origin, even though he'd been in the country for some 40, 50 years. So I think we need to be more robust. And this is, again, it's a death knell for Labour if they don't address it, whether it be under Burnham or whoever else takes the premiership. But again, there are lots of concerns about Burnham taking over from Keir Starmer. I don't think he has the capacity to deal with the international world stage, or certainly in terms of the international conflicts which are out there, and serve the British people any better than Keir Starmer was.
All right, I guess the one thing you are good at, and certainly the King has shown a propensity to do so, is preventing Harry's family from returning. So, I mean, Harry, you can come home, brother, but the family can stay in the States.
Yeah,
I mean,
well,
try and explain that to the world.
okay, so I'll encapsulate this as quickly and easily as I possibly can. So Prince Harry and Meghan obviously decided to separate themselves from the royal family, as everybody knows, decided to step down from royal duties, yet then decided, after they realized how expensive private security can be, decided, ouch, this is making a massive hole in our pocket. So we want to reinitiate security. And how better can we do this than potentially getting RASP, the Royalty and Specialist Protection Officers, back and on duty for us? This goes to RAVEC, which is a central group which remains completely impartial. They make their assessment of every member of the royal family, every politician, to decide who has security and who doesn't, and what level of security that is. Anyway, long and the short of it, Harry's been contesting it. He's not a serving royal. RAVEC have said no consistently. And the problem is that Harry is now needing to return to the United Kingdom because of Invictus next year, the Invictus Veteran Games. If he was to bring Meghan and the kids, then that immediately nullifies any argument he has, because he believes there is a risk in the United Kingdom to him and his family.
It is funny how governments can move quickly when they want to change the law, right? But somehow not when it's red tape protecting a convicted rapist. It's disgusting. Well, now to Layla Cunningham, who says Britain is paying a high price for mass illegal migration and politicians too afraid to tackle crime. Here's our conversation. She's such an interesting woman. We filmed it in London.
Lovely to see you.
Lovely to see you too.
So you're the woman who wants to be the new mayor of London.
I do, yeah.
Is it going to happen?
100%. I only do things that I expect to win.
It's a big job, and there's a lot of cleaning up to do.
It is. It's an exciting job because I know exactly what I want to do. You know, and Nigel always says that people go into politics for the title, or some people go in knowing what to do, and I know what to do. You know, London's my city, born and raised. My kids are here. It's all I know, and I know what needs to be done. I was a senior Crown prosecutor in London, so I went after the bad guys, and it's not enough to go after them in court. You have to go after them on the streets as well.
There's a lot of bad guys in London at the moment.
There is.
How do you even start?
We have a knife epidemic. It's gone up by 70%. We had 2 stabbings in Crystal Palace and Battersea the previous weekend. And what's interesting is the mayor right now doesn't admit it. He keeps telling everyone that it's safer, but even worse, he says that anyone that talks about the crime in London is spreading disinformation or misinformation, 2 terms that I despise, online. And he lobbied the government for a central body to control what people post online about crime in London. Instead of keeping our safe streets, he's just interested in controlling the narrative.
So then how do you go about fixing it? I mean, literally tens of thousands of Australians come here every year, and it's getting more obvious.
And leave with no phones. Well, number one, we don't have visible policing. Our mayor doesn't believe in visible policing. They're bogged down in paperwork. So we have about 35,000 officers. You know, I deploy them all on the streets. And I leverage technology so they're not bogged down in paperwork. There is amazing technology that's come out that you don't have to kind of sit down for 6 hours and fill out forms. I envision a city of the future for London. You know, Tokyo on steroids, where you've got automated trains. We're not held to ransom by strikes every few months. Police on the streets. You know, efficient, value for money. Startups opening, tech startups. You know, I go to Oxford and Cambridge and big universities, and students don't want to move to London. It's no longer the dream. And that's upsetting for me because I have, for all my sins, and there are many, 6 teenagers. And 2 are in America, and they don't want to come back.
Hang on. Apart from all the interesting stuff you said then, I was captured by 6 teenagers.
Yeah.
So how did you fit all that into...
I thought you were going to say, how'd you do that? I don't know if you have teenagers, but they don't really want anything to do with you.
Yeah.
So they've given me the freedom to pursue politics.
How many kids do you have?
7. I have a 4-year-old that I had as a last kind of hurrah. He's very independent, as you can imagine. But I have 6 teenagers and a little 4-year-old.
That's some last hurrah. A last hurrah that goes for 20 years. I mean,
true. He's the best.
You're obviously not scared of much.
Am I scared of much? You know what? I worry a lot about my family. That's mainly what I worry about. I lost my sister to cancer 3 years ago, my father as well when I was 20. So at the back of my mind, it's always that tomorrow's never promised and anything can happen. And, you know, as a prosecutor, I've seen that a life can be taken in an instant or changed. So I am always, I'm always scared of assuming that tomorrow will come with joy. They always say language is the assumption of fools. So that's what worries me. And perhaps that's why I'm in politics, you know. There's no time to waste.
Well, there's a lot going on. And I think the Reform Party has been pretty strong on migration, certainly.
Definitely.
You're Muslim.
I am, yeah.
How does that go down with the Muslim community?
I think a lot of them want to kill me. I get a lot of death threats. I'm the new Salman Rushdie for them.
Doesn't worry you?
Does it worry me? No, because they don't represent the Islam I know. You know, I mean, my parents are from Egypt, which is like Lebanon, you know, the UAE. Egypt in the 60s and 70s was like Europe. And it's this form of radical Islam that's overtaken kind of the Middle East that I don't recognize as part of religion. I see it more as the politicization of Islam. And you've had that come here as well to the UK. And that type of Islam is not cohesive to life in Britain.
There seems to be a massive disconnect, and the wave of illegal migrants has caused a huge disruption, you know, I think, here.
In terms, the disruption I feel is the trust between the people and the government. When I was growing up, I always assumed that the government would do everything it could to keep me safe. But now you see that our government is allowing, you know, thousands of men, tens of thousands of men to come in illegally. There are levers they could pull to stop it. They do the reverse. So not only do they allow them in, and let's put that into perspective, these men throw their passports, right? So you have no idea who they are. Some of them have turned out to be Muslim Brotherhoods. Some of them have raped young girls. That unknown should present a massive risk to any government. And they should be like, you know, we don't know who these guys are. Let's detain them. They shouldn't be allowed to roam free. They've boarded our country illegally. And they should not be allowed next to young girls or towns and villages. They do the reverse. They put them in towns and villages at the taxpayer's expense in 4-star hotels, or they move them into housing that should go to the Brits. And if you say anything, you're called a bigot or a racist. And the British public's expected to pay for it, basically pay for it and shut up. And the problem is we don't treat illegal migrants as criminals. So because there is something called the Refugee Convention and the European Convention of Human Rights, which says that you cannot punish someone on the manner in which they land in your country. So they land, they come on a boat and they're illegal migrants. The moment they set foot, they say the word asylum, which neutralizes the illegal entry, and they become asylum seekers. Once their asylum claim is granted, by the way, they are deemed refugees. And in London, 15 boroughs, including Westminster, which I think we're in now, anyway, a very expensive one, has declared itself a sanctuary borough, where it puts refugees to the top of the housing list, while our veterans sleep rough. So illegal migrants have more security of housing than our young people, because what happens here is, due to mass migration, effectively importing cheap wages. Wages have been stagnant since 2008. Prices haven't, taxes haven't. So if you've graduated from Oxford, you'll get a salary of about 60K. You'll live in not a great flat in like zone 2, zone 1, zone 2, zone 3, sorry, and you'll delay having children. Zone 2 and zone 1 for your viewers is a nice area. You'll delay having children because you can't afford a house, you don't have security of home. When it comes time for you to have a family, you're born and raised here, you work, you did everything right, you went to Oxford. You have to move out because you can no longer afford to live in the city that raised you. Yet, if you're a refugee, bear in mind you arrived illegally, you will be given a house in London, you apply for your dependents to be flown in up to 20, and the state will find housing for you in London for free. They have more security of housing than our children, who will have to move out and subsidize them living. That is what's happening in London right now. So when people say we always talk about migration, migration has so many downward effects on everything.
So this puts you in a difficult position in regards to the religious aspect of the situation, doesn't it? I mean, is that why the Muslims want to kill you?
I don't know, you'd have to ask them. But listen, when I was growing up in London, a journalist asked me the other day, did you suffer racism because you were Muslim when you were young? And I had to think about that because nobody cared. Nobody asked. Nobody knew, not because I hid it, but really nobody cared what religion you were. You didn't wear it as your identity, what religion you were, where your parents are from, did you grow up in a council house, are you working class, or you're not. You were just cool or you were cool. It was just on personality base. And what's happened now is the Labour Party and the government has gone round to different ethnic minorities. They've gone to the Muslim community and told them, you know what, this country is Islamophobic. It's oppressed you. We are the only ones who have your back. Make sure you vote for us. They go to the other, this country's racist. It's oppressing you. And they foster hate in the very country that gave these people everything. And it fosters division along sectarian and ethnic lines. And that's what London's become now. And it's competing interests, competing priorities. But that's not the London I grew up in. I grew up in a London where we were all Londoners. It didn't really matter where you were from. For instance, there was a stabbing in a big Jewish area. And I went to see them and I got messages and they said, oh, thank you so much for coming to support our community. And I thought about it. I'm like, your community is my community. You are London. If you get stabbed, if you're not safe, then none of us are. And that's the London I want to go back to, where nobody really cares what you look like, who you pray to, what sexual orientation you have,
So what's the balance then for this grand old city? And how do you navigate
I think
through?
law and order is number one in any city, because I think there's no point in having civil liberties if you don't have freedom. Right now, we do not have the freedom to walk around with our phone out, or women don't have the freedom to go out at night and feel safe. I don't have the freedom to let my kids out without tracking them. I think there's a freedom to feeling safe. There's a freedom to knowing that if you call the police, they're going to come. There's a freedom to seeing a police officer there. And those freedoms don't exist right now. Worse, actually, you are told that you are lying if you feel London's unsafe by the political class. And in that, I include journalists.
See, this is so interesting because even when we were coming over here, people were drawing some kind of, negativity out of us and the way that we were portraying London. But it's actually a lot worse.
Oh, I mean, listen, it's really worse. Crime is rampant. Youth, what's really upsetting is that almost every week a youth is stabbed to death. Not one headline in any press. The mayor doesn't mention it.
It's terrible.
The Home Secretary doesn't mention it. The Prime Minister. And, there's these young boys in balaclavas walking around in London and they are like faceless villains. One gets stabbed, two get stabbed. No one mentions it. But I've prosecuted these kids who carry knives. They're vulnerable. They're children. They're teenagers. And they're the lost, forgotten souls of London.
It's terrible.
Unbelievable. Nobody cares about them, And the mothers, sometimes I see them in court. Sometimes they'd just be prosecuted for a knife. And the mothers, you saw the look of despair, And I hope, my main aim is to change that.
How does, given what Rupert Lowe's, the inquiry into the gang rapes and grooming, I mean, that's just heinous. We've spoken about that several times.
Awful.
And I wonder how you go about making anyone feel safe now, and the focus on some of these particular groups and why they haven't been cleaned up. I don't understand.
Well, it's a multitude of reasons. We've created an environment within public sectors, social workers, the police, where being called racist is worse than not saving a victim for your job, for your reputation. And so they will do anything to avoid it. And so they will ignore things before their very eyes. And you saw that a bit. You also had the fact that the Muslims in certain parts of areas. So when you have immigration in large numbers, so my parents came in the 60s, right? It was small immigration. They had to integrate. They wanted to, but they had to. When you have it in massive numbers and it's concentrated in an area, they dominate. And in these areas, certain immigrants dominated, mainly Pakistani, and they represented a block vote. So to go against them would have made the MP or the council lose their vote, and so they pandered to them. You literally had Labour MPs say these girls should shut up for the benefit of social cohesion. These girls were let down by the state, betrayed, I'd say, by the state, sacrificed at the altar of social cohesion and political gain. And it's disgusting. And Sadiq Khan denies it ever happened here. But I've read victims' reports. Girls were driven from like Oxford or the North to London, where hundreds of men were waiting for them in a house. because their abuser owed those people money or whatever, and they were gang raped throughout the night. And Sadiq Khan says they don't exist. And so my number one priority is an elite force, not only to get the groomers, the rapists, but also to prosecute those who covered it up. But worse than that, by the way, that I've heard victims say that they fly in people from Pakistan called freshies, where they send the photos of the girls to them and they are flown in just to come and gang rape the girls. We issue visas for that. If I really wanted to crack down on it, I would ban all visas from Pakistan until they're willing to take their rapists back, but they don't want to take them back.
Wow. So this is why you're the target now, right? And how do you clean it up when you're asking, particular, sort of Muslim community to take more responsibility?
They're not Muslims, so they're not. It's a Pakistani mainly. I'd say over 95% Pakistani men. And I don't care where they're from. Even if they were Egyptian, I'd go after them. It is disgusting. And the fact that anyone in power covered it up. For instance, now the government's saying that they have an inquiry to investigate it. You know who's leading that inquiry? A Labour peer. Right? The very party that covered it up. She was the child commissioner when it was happening. And from her reports as child commissioner, she didn't want to put the ethnicity of the men. And the ethnicity is what connected it all. And the police failed to mention the ethnicity for decades.
It's shocking.
For me, it's the biggest scandal this country has ever seen. And I think it's not, the transcript, you can't read the transcripts.
Do you?
I spoke to a victim.
Yeah.
She was picked up from school. Open. This didn't even happen. It wasn't covert. They would pick them up from a bus stop, ply them with heroin and drugs for 48 hours to get them addicted. I mean, it's heartbreaking. I have girls that age.
How does a Muslim woman come into this and fix it?
I don't think religion has anything to do with it. I'm British first, and I'm not running on some kind of Muslim platform. I'm running because I love this city and I love this country, and I don't care where they're from. That is wrong, and I lay blame obviously on the rapists, but also on anyone that looked away or covered it up for whatever reason. I don't care. In this country, for MPs and public workers, they believe accountability either means resigning or just saying, I'm sorry, right? In the real world, you and I, we do something like that, we go to prison, the system crushes you. And so I want to crush them in the same manner that the system crushes the ordinary, hardworking, law-abiding citizen.
Okay, so let's take the conversation wider. And the Reform Party, it's on a roll. But I guess the by-election's different. I mean, it's a very safe Labor seat, and he's probably...
It was a leadership contest, really.
Yeah, 100%. And so he's, within a couple of weeks, we would imagine is going to be the 18th Prime Minister in 2 years.
Unelected.
Yeah.
And listen, constitutionally, we don't have to elect them, but, if you have a new leader and you're confident in your mandate, take it to the party, take it to the country. I was on a show yesterday with a Labour MP. I couldn't believe my ears. With a Labour MP, El Khans, who actually might give a leadership contest. And I was saying, are you going to have a general election? And he said, well, we're going to have an internal conversation within the parliamentary party about what the country wants. I'm sorry, it's not really up to you to decide what the country wants, especially if you're going to change. He was talking about the direction, the change in that. I'm like, it's not up to you. It's up to that conversation is to be had with the country, not behind closed doors within the Labour Party. And then the other MP, Naz Shah, was like, I disagree with that. The parliamentary party is extremely important in this decision. It's an entitlement. They don't believe in democracy, actually. They don't believe it's an entitlement to power. And I think the dividing line is not right and left anymore. The dividing line is between a political class that feel power flows from up to the people, and the people who just feel completely betrayed.
Do you know what it makes me from Australia feel really good about our politics?
I should.
And we're not going that great.
No, it should. I mean, I was thinking the other day, we're on to our 7th Prime Minister or however many.
No, we've had
it's
a few.
30 degrees. We might win the World Cup. You know what? We could be Italy.
God, it's hot here. I mean, the place is falling apart. It's hot.
and you know what's worse is that We're not allowed to have air conditioning, by the way, in this country.
It's shocking.
You know what I mean? I'd say it's a health hazard. In this modern, just to put a proxy on the state of the country, the day that Elon Musk IPO'd, sending rockets, first trillionaire, our government was discussing how many hours they would allow us to use towel rails for the environment.
You're joking.
That was the national discussion. And should we allow people who are building new homes to have underfloor heating?
Net zero, baby.
We are regulating ourselves into relegation. You know, while America builds and creates the future, we are stuck in the past.
What do you think of Australia?
So my nephew's he was an A&E doctor in the NHS, and he was one of the many that you stole from us. and he's in Sydney, and he's like, man, this is the dream. You know, he's like, the chicks are hot. He goes, like, it's safe. He's got disposable income. He's learning to fly planes. He loves it.
Yeah.
He's never coming back.
Well, you can always come down to Australia and run.
So, well, yeah, I could. My son actually is going to do a year abroad, and he's thinking of going to Sydney for 6 weeks.
One of your sons.
One of my sons.
Oh my God, you're keeping up with
One of my
you.
sons.
And with London itself, I mean, I hate to tell you this, but I was late getting to a lunch yesterday to catch up with some of your friends, actually.
Yeah.
Because I was only allowed to go 20 miles an hour. I mean, I don't want to, you know,
No.
create a
It
storm
needs to
of
be
controversy.
discussed. No. So when I drive, I focus more on staying at 20 than I do on anything. You know, any safety. And when I was a prosecutor for my sins, I had to do traffic courts. And listen, I've prosecuted like domestic abuse, you know, drug dealers. It's the only time where you see grown men cry. No, because they're like, I just did 23. But if you get 12 points, you get your license removed.
Yeah.
And all they did was 23 miles per hour 4 times, easily done. You know, and they've lost their livelihood. And it's number one, it's a racket, and nobody knows why it's there. On a busy, I get it near schools and residential areas. That is something I will remove, because good policy protects people, right? Bad policy punishes people. And that policy is not really protecting you from reckless drivers. It's not punishing reckless drivers. It's literally just punishing drivers.
So what are you going to do with that? Because that needs
So
to
on
be
the big
fixed.
roads, I would definitely increase the speed limit.
And look,
I want to do like a whole audit of all the roads.
But how are you possibly going to make any changes with all the Greens, you know, in power? And
that doesn't matter, because actually what people don't realise is the mayor is, it's a very strong mandate. There's no parliament, there's no cabinet, that, you know, it's just, everything's waved through. It's remarkable.
Well, good luck with it, because
Thank you.
I was sitting in a black cab yesterday for 45 minutes to go 1 kilometre.
That must have been expensive.
Yeah. It was expensive and it was hot.
No, I know, it's ridiculous.
He didn't put the aircon on.
No, but then you've got, well, yeah, I mean, I don't he might have fallen on hard times.
I said to him, are you okay? And he goes, no, I'm feeling, you know, I don't want to talk about it.
Oh.
You know, they're fabulous, the cabbies. I don't know exactly where they're going, but
they've been betrayed by Khan.
Yeah.
Big time. So, he's banned them from picking up in places. Did you know that machine that you pay with, right, that has to be installed by regulation in every cab, takes 5% off the cab drivers when you pay? It's like another tax.
No wonder they're upset.
It's a racket.
No wonder they're rioting.
Why should it take any? It's just, and they're not allowed to take cash. So it's a racket.
What are we going to see in London? What are we going to see across the UK in the next little bit? And because it seems to me there's so much division. Huh?
It depends. I mean, listen, if there's a general election, he could. I think he should.
There's no way he will. Unless he feels like that, you know, if he bounces into power and his things are
That's what I mean.
okay.
There's a slight bounce now. You know, perhaps he'll take advantage of it, and then what's coming down the line is not good. I think inflation's going to go up. We're massively in debt. I mean, things aren't looking good. So perhaps in this honeymoon period, you might decide to call an election. The country is very divided, and it's very upsetting. And the problem is that you've got two classes of you've got the political class who don't have to live with the consequences of their political decisions, and so they almost sneer and look down at the average Joe who does, and they're like, "What are you complaining about? You know, who cares if no one speaks English in the town that you grew up in? What's your problem? Stop being such a bigot. Accept it. You know, Who cares if you've got 600 illegal men who are housed in your tiny little quaint town and one of them goes on to rape a girl? It's just one. It's just one girl. You know, the other 590 guys are fine. Just stop complaining. Literally, that's how they look down on people.
Maybe you should just skip over the mayoral stuff and go straight to
Well,
the big house.
Well, we have.
There's a plan.
Well, no. The plan is
Nigel's
Nigel.
looking old.
No. Oh my God. Nigel has more energy than me in a week, in a day.
Yeah.
He is remarkable. I've been with Nigel where we've been at events and stayed super late, super on form, and then I see him on a show or at a meeting at 8 a.m. and that man is so sharp. You know, he is, and I've always noticed that great leaders don't sleep much. You know, Margaret Thatcher only slept 4 hours, and Nigel's the same. You know, that man is relentless. And I tell you one thing: today is the 10th anniversary of Brexit, and we keep relitigating it. For me, I voted for Brexit because I believe that if the people who govern me or create laws, I don't like it, I can vote them out. You couldn't do that with the European Commission. And it's given us so many freedoms to create our own trade deals, our own laws, allow people who we allow in. And instead of relitigating it, we need a government that's going to utilize those powers, those freedoms, to make the most of it. And Nigel's the only leader, and that's why I switched, who truly believes in Britain enough to put Britain first and to utilize those freedoms and power to make us the powerhouse that we should be.
It's great talking with you. I wish
Thank
you
you.
all the very best.
Thank you very much.
It'd be great to swing back into town next time, you know, hopefully the election
Hopefully.
soon, and your mayor,
Be great.
and we can go whatever speed we want.
Well, not whatever. But at least you'll feel safe walking.
Exactly. Lovely
Yeah.
to see you.
Lovely to see you, Carl.
Thank you.
She is such a force, a legend. We look forward to having Layla back on the show sometime really soon. Well, tomorrow night on the Carl Weekly, the farmer whose viral video sparked outrage after he says he was brutally attacked for feeding his own cattle. Former AFP detective David Craig is also on the show with his claims the very public arrest of Ben Roberts-Smith was designed to influence a future jury. And new laws requiring lawyers and real estate agents to report on their own clients. Is it another step towards greater government intrusion? We'll see you then.